Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Tim Phelps. I'm the Executive Director for TMACC. Thank you very much for joining us today for our inaugural program for the Employer Council. It's a new initiative that the TMACC has here put together so that we can help answer some of those transportation questions for folks that are planning parking, they're planning their HR benefits, they're planning commutes for their employees. So as we move down through the year and through our programming, we will have various different topics. At the close, I do have a survey. We do have a survey set up that we'd like to get your feedback on today's program, and that we would like to focus our future meetings to what your needs may be. And so, with that, we will be recording today's session, and we will then be posting that back onto the TMACC website. So with us today is David Judd. David and I work together with ACT, which is the Association of Commuter Transportation. It's the National TDM Association. We are both active in our local chapter, which is the Mid-Atlantic area, which includes people from New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania, and a little sliver of Connecticut. And so we're super excited to have David with us today. He is the expert in the field. So David, it's all yours. Oh, David, you're on mute.
Now I'm off mute. I hope. Thanks, Tim. I'm really glad to be here and hope I can enlighten you a little bit on commuter benefits. And at the end, I think we'll take some questions about it, maybe about your programs. And I do have to say, since there's tax stuff involved, I am not a tax, I'm not a lawyer or an accountant, so I'm not going to give you tax advice, and you should always consult your tax professional when you do that. That's probably my only disclaimer. So I'm ready to go. Tim, I'm just waiting for the presentation.
Yep. David, we'll have to make a step backwards here.
Okay,
I do have it on question 3, so there we go.
Okay. So again, thanks, and let's get into it. So we do have a couple of questions, and I think, Tim, are you going to be able to tally the results of these?
I will. I just launched question number 1 for everybody.
Okay.
So does your company offer commuter benefits? Yes, no, I'm not sure. So I have a couple of people
Coming in.
Okay.
So I am happy to see that so far nobody's saying they don't know what we're talking about. That's a really good sign.
There we go. Okay, let's end that poll. And so there, folks, does your company offer commuter benefits? 54% said yes, 23% have said no, and there are three people who have said that I'm not sure.
Okay. So for some of you who are for the 54%, some of this may be old news, some of it may be new news in terms of where the benefit has come from and how it can be used, and we'll be getting into that. So next, I'll do the next one, Tim. Question 2.
If your company offers a commuter benefit, is it pre-tax only, employer subsidy, a combination, or you're just not sure? Still coming in. Okay. David, I'm gonna close the up.
Okay, let's do
Two
that.
more. I know. There you go. Okay. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let me share the results for everybody.
So that's a fairly even distribution.
So yeah, we have 20% pre-tax only, 30% employer subsidy, 20% with the combination, and then 30% not sure. We really have an opportunity to change those not sures around, David.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Doing
so
that. And let me launch the third question for you.
let me, there we go.
So if your company offers a commuter benefit, how is it administered? A pass or a voucher is distributed, and sorry for the redundancy in there, in the office. SEPTA Key Advantage or Key Commuter, Eden Red Commuter Benefit Solution, for formerly Ride Eco, a third-party administrator, or cash reimbursement. Okay, we still have a couple of people that are hanging out there. There we go. Give it a couple more seconds here. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to end the poll and share the results. So David, 56% of the folks that responded said a pass or a voucher is distributed in the office. Nobody is taking advantage of the SEPTA Key Advantage program. Eden Red is one person is doing that. One person has a third-party administrator, and then we have 2 folks that do a cash reimbursement.
Okay, good. And we'll be going through some of those options as we go along. So I will move on to the next slide.
Yeah.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, or some who've been doing this maybe for a while, what are commuter benefits? And I'm going to start at the bottom and say there's terms that are used interchangeably, and I'll probably do this in this presentation. Technically, it's the Qualified Transportation Fringe Benefit. That's how it was defined in the Internal Revenue Code, which is found in section 132F. It's also called commuter benefits, transit benefit, both singular and plural. We're going to use them all interchangeably. It's pretty much, we're talking the same concept. But it is a fringe benefit that allows employees to pay for some, and in some cases, all of their commuting expenses with tax-free money. And that's Chesco bus, it's all SEPTA services, Patco van pools, and even parking is included. As you get to let's say Center City, you're also talking Amtrak in some cases. And if you're down into Delaware, I guess it's it's not First Transit, it's DART First State, I believe. But essentially we're talking transit services and as you know, van pools. So is it popular? Well, clearly it's popular from the poll that we saw, and there seems just within the group of people participating, a good number of you who are receiving it. There was a study done by the American Public Transit Association back in 2016, and obviously pre-COVID, and things have changed. And I'll be honest, things have changed since COVID in terms of transit ridership. But they estimated 1.87 billion trips annually are attributed to riders using the commuter benefit. In other studies that were done locally in metropolitan areas, up to 50% and the average area being 20 to 30% of all commuter rush hour trips are purchased with fares where the employee has received a transit benefit, whether that's a combination, a pre-tax, or a subsidy. The Commuter Benefits Work for Us Coalition, which was involved in advocating for the benefit on Capitol Hill over a number of years, estimated, and this was an estimate in 2010, that 3 million commuters received the benefit. That number probably increased significantly from 2010 up until 2020 when COVID changed the world. And as you understand it, it offers some significant financial incentives and qualitative benefits to employers and employees, and I'll be discussing some of those. So now we have question 4. And for some people who've never heard of it or just started receiving the benefit, it may be all new to them, but let's see what people know about ancient history.
So when were commuter
not so
benefits
ancient.
created? 1963, the Clean Air Act. 1984, the Tax Reform Act. 1998, the Transportation Equity Act for the 21st century. 2008, the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, or in 2017, Tax Cut and Jobs Act. Here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here we go. I will share with you, David. It's a big surprise.
Interesting numbers. So before I give you the exact answer, let me tell you, I'm going to close that poll. Let me tell you where it all starts. And I guess part of the answer is it doesn't start with the Clean Air Act of 1963. It started in the 1970s when employer path programs started to become popular and emerged in many transit agencies. The first was probably at the MBTA in Boston, where they were selling passes and somebody decided, why don't we try selling to employers? And they started probably the first bulk pass program in the country. So to the answer, the commuter benefit, for any of you who are under the age of 40, it's older than you. And it started in 1984 with the Tax Reform Act, which codified, i.e. put into law and into the tax code, a qualified transportation fringe benefit, there's that term again, that allowed $15 per month as an employer subsidy. And you might ask, where did $15 come from? Well, given how things work in Washington and everything is inside the Beltway, $15 coincidentally was the cost of a one-zone flash pass on Washington's Metro bus service. So somebody in trying to determine what the amount should be probably said, oh, it's $15, figuring it's $15 everywhere in the country. And that's how it started, as a $15 subsidy. In 1998, and I want to say there's a lot of other legal provisions that go through this, so I'm only highlighting the main ones. 1998 was what was called T21, the Transportation Equity Act for the 21st century. This was actually a very significant, broad-based transportation and infrastructure bill. Many of the projects that you see today that are being talked about in infrastructure, some of that has roots back in T21. But the important part of T21 is that for the first time, it took away that $15 subsidy and allowed an employee-paid pre-tax $65 deduction to the program. At that point, commuter benefits really took off because it no longer cost it was not a cost to the employer, it was a set aside with employee money. And I also want to say that T21, or back to the Tax Reform Act of '84, and then in T21, allowed for what those of you who participate in the program have seen, an inflationary increase every year. The benefit now has a maximum of $300 per month, so there's been a significant growth in it. In 2008, the Emergency Economic Stabilization Act allowed a bike benefit. And I'll be getting to the bike benefit a little more, but the bike benefit was set up as $20 per month as a reimbursement. It could be a voucher, it could be a direct payment against receipt, and that started in 2009. It's interesting to note that two of the greatest bicycle commuting cities in the country are Philadelphia and Minneapolis. And one would expect, given hills and weather, that wouldn't be the case, but there's significant, some of you probably are aware, significant number of bike commuters in both of those cities. Are they using the benefit, or have they used the benefit? That I can't tell you. So then we go to 2015 and the Consolidated Appropriations Act. This created permanent parity between transit and parking. Earlier, between the T21 and Emergency Economic Stabilization Act, there was a provision that allowed parking in transit in the Qualified Transportation Fringe Benefit. And the parking at the time was set at $145. Again, why? Because that's what members of Congress and their staffs paid to park within the Capitol Hill complex. So it seemed logical, that's what everybody pays to park. But over the years, with the inflationary increase, the balance really got out of whack with the 65 and what at the time was the 145. So in 2015, this act created a permanent parity between transit and parking. Again, for transit, it was a really big deal because it took away an advantage for people to receive a parking benefit. And then 2017 was a critical act in that there was a lot of argument in Capitol Hill that the transit benefit, the QTFB, was going to be taken away. There was significant lobbying, not just by transit interests, by transportation interests, and including some people like AAA, to retain the commuter benefit. But it also creates something called UBIT, which is it's unreported business income tax. And that was a payment that was placed on nonprofits because they did not get a tax benefit for themselves. And it also suspended the bike benefit. The UBIT was repealed by the Taxpayers Certainty and Disaster Tax Relief Act. That's a mouthful in 2019. And again, what was important in repealing UBIT is it was not just transportation people who were arguing that it was unfair. It was church groups, other nonprofit housing agencies, YMCAs who benefited from this and were saying this is unfair, and also a concern of what other kinds of charges would be put on us in the future as being a nonprofit organization. So that's all in a nutshell. Increasingly over the years, we have seen the deduction, as I mentioned, increasing due to inflation. We're now at $300. I also want to mention that the rules behind this now 40-year-old benefit, or almost 40 years old, the rules for the QTFB were established by the IRS in 2000. So they're 23 years old. And to be very honest, they have not been modified in many ways. And one of the things, and you'll see later, bike share, for example, is not included. And the IRS has been reluctant to include bike share, which didn't exist in 1984 or let alone in 2000, because they feel that they need to be mandated by Congress to do it. So there's issues that are still out there Hence, you can't use bike share to receive a commuter benefit. So why do employers offer them? And for those of you who already receive the benefit, you can see the reasons. And there's no one reason here that stands out. And it's something that over the years changes with how people feel about things like corporate sustainability goals, carbon footprint. I guess the best way to put it is each company chooses its own reason to offer the program, but these are the ones that are most commonly noted by companies when surveys have been done. And it's pretty uniform over the years. So you can look at it and say, well, why did my company do it? And think back, it must have been one of these reasons. And what are the basics? Again, many of you participate. For those of you who don't, let's go through it. It's employer provided. That's a key. It's not something you get as a tax write-off at the end of the year. It has to be provided by the employer. It covers transit, van pooling, parking, ride share like Uber and Lyft, but not all Uber and Lyft rides. There's some special circumstances of how Uber and Lyft qualify for the program. It can be offered pre-tax and talking employer subsidy or a combination. And the combination is where the employer may subsidize up to $200 per month, and the employee takes the remainder, the remaining, let's say $100 or whatever the amount would be, as a pre-tax benefit. Having been this for a number of years, and I would say if your employer is offering you a subsidy and not offering the remainder pre-tax, you really should talk to them, because it's a benefit that they're losing out on and you're potentially losing out on too. And it's similar to FSAs, but there's a lot less regulation and paperwork. For those who know the details on that, there's no section, FSAs, which are section 125 plans, require an annual enrollment in a form 5500 to be filed. None of that has to be done in this program. There is no use it or lose it provision. Some people feel at the end of the year, you lose the money, it does not carry over if you're in a commuter benefit account. Not true. And there's open enrollment. This isn't like some of the FSA benefits. You have to enroll by October 1 or November 1. An employer can initiate a program at almost any time of the year. Employers who start these programs will typically do it at 2 times a year. One, January 1st. It's a great time to start any new program. And sometimes they'll wait till September 1 after people have come back from vacation in the summer. And that's also a good time to start the program. So the program options, and I've kind of alluded to this, there's the pre-tax benefit. The employee can set aside an amount up to $300. Typically, the amount they set aside doesn't exceed their transit fare because they cannot get a refund on it. And payroll systems won't let you set up over the 300 anyway. There's the employer provided subsidy, also up to 300, the combinations I discussed, and the bicycle benefit. So the bicycle benefit is a $20 per month subsidy, but as I noted, it was suspended till 2026. There's a significant effort going on in Capitol Hill now, and there has been over the years. Congressman Blumenauer from Oregon has led this to move the bike benefit into some combination with the transit and parking, as well as to make the transit benefit, I'm sorry, the bicycle benefit on a pre-tax basis, and essentially look at the bike benefit as another mode of travel, just like van pool, just like transit. So there are things, I hate to get into negatives, but there are things that are not covered. And I mentioned bike share is not covered. A typical carpool is not covered. Shared use mobility is generally not covered, with some exceptions, and that ties into how it gets paid for and definitions of the tax code. I don't want to get into this right at the moment. It's something, if any of you have questions, we can talk about. But there are some limitations there. Micro mobility becoming very popular, scooters, skateboards, not covered. Residential parking, not covered. Tolls, taxis, fuel mileage repair, EV charging. I think EV charging at some point will end up in a future change to the law. In general, laws have not caught up to EV charging. We know there's the effort going on about mileage-based user fees and business trips, meetings, airport transfers, airport parking transfers, etc. Excuse me 1 second. So who's eligible? And this is always a question that comes up. In general, an employee who receives a W-2 is eligible. Therefore, no one else is. Self-employed, because it's tied to the IRS. And what the IRS is always concerned about is loss of revenue and untaxed income. So self-employed persons, that's partners, sole proprietors, S corps, excuse me, employees with 2% or more ownership, independent contractors are not eligible to receive that full benefit. But the tax code does allow them to receive what's called de minimis fringe benefit of $21 per month, $252 a year. Not a lot of money, but it's still something. This is another area that I think has been discussed over the years. And given how we're starting to look at the gig economy, and if you look at city-state laws that are increasingly favoring gig economy employees, I would imagine at some future point Congress will address this also when it comes to the commuter benefit. So then what are the benefits to employers? Well, there's a reduced FICA match. The wrong amount is there, and I apologize. The reduced FICA match, employees can see a savings of $275 per employee annually. I'm sorry, that is the correct number. Essentially, that represents the FICA savings that an employer would otherwise pay. And FICA includes Social Security and Medicare. And it's the payment they would otherwise pay on top of an employee's salary. So there is a savings to an employer, and for, let's say, an employer of 100 people, we'll add some zeros to that, and it starts to become some very real money. For employees, and employees can combine the transit and parking to receive, as I mentioned earlier, the maximum of a $600 per month benefit. Now, noticing what some people responded in the survey, I have to stress it's important, and the IRS has ruled on this. I hate to sound like a teacher coming down hard, but cash reimbursement is generally prohibited with the transit benefit. It is allowed for parking with receipts, but the circumstances for cash reimbursement for transit are very, very, very narrow. And it's something that you should be aware of if your company is receiving if you're receiving a cash reimbursement, you may want to go to your HR and say, you should get some legal advice. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not an accountant, but I can tell you that cash is definitely prohibited by the statute. So the benefits to employees. Well, we touched a little on this. When it offered as a pre-tax benefit, the funds are exempt from federal income taxes and FICA. And in some states, which are called conforming states, and I believe Pennsylvania is one, that includes state income taxes. In other words, what is reported on box 1 of your W-2 is also the same amount reported as income to the state. So in Pennsylvania, you would save any state income taxes because that money would not be, the money set aside would not show up. New Jersey is an exception to that, actually, and New Jersey is not considered a conforming state. In that amount, the state wages would be different than the federal wages. But this can yield a savings of over $1,000 a year, maybe even more, depending on tax bracket. particularly at the full $300 level. When offered as a subsidy, employees effectively receive an untaxable raise of $300 per month. In other words, your employer is giving you $300 in transit passes or vouchers or loading your smart card. And that money is not taxable to the employer in terms of FICA, and it's not taxable to you in terms of federal income tax, state income tax, and the FICA. From an employee point of view, you always want to get the subsidy. From the employer point of view, it's better to do it pre-tax. That's why the combination works, but it depends really on the company and how the company feels about doing it and the impact on their finances. So you can receive it in 6 ways, and this we alluded to this some in the survey earlier. There's vouchers for transit, parking, and bicycle. For those of you in the Philadelphia, well, you're all in the Philadelphia area. The voucher used to be called EcoPass. For years, it was called Transit Check. I believe it now it's under the name of Commuter Check, which is a trademark of Eaton Red, which bought the Ride Eco program from DVRPC. Previously, the Ride Eco program was the only locally operated transit benefit program in the country. There's transit passes and other fare media, Chesco Bus, and Tim can go into details about how to get passes from the TMA and SEPTA. These passes can be delivered directly to the office. Some of you indicated that's how you get your passes now. There can be direct pay to van pool operators and to parking facilities. There can be reimbursement for parking expenses. The reimbursement, as well as the direct pay, is typically done through a third-party provider, although the van pools have been very good about working with companies and setting up direct payment. There's also prepaid debit cards that are restricted to transit and or parking. There's codes called merchant category codes that are embedded in the card. These cards can be anonymous or personalized. And with those codes, the protection is that the money is used for transit and not used, for example, at Home Depot or Starbucks or Amazon. And then there's more commonly today, and as technology has improved, direct loading to smart cards or apps. You're probably familiar with SEPTA Key, the Patco Freedom Card, if you go back and look at the prepaid debit cards, they can be loaded to Apple Pay and Google Pay. That's really becoming the trend, and it makes it easier, certainly on transit agencies. It reduces their fare collection costs.
So, David, I have a quick question for you. Sure. When we're looking at that last slide about providers, does Amtrak, I know that some folks in Chester County that would be traveling into Great Valley have an opportunity to take Amtrak. Is Amtrak part of the program?
Amtrak is part of the program. If you have a voucher, I will be honest, for those of you who still get vouchers and go to Amtrak, there may be some pushback, but it's better to have a debit card, and Amtrak will accept those debit cards. I can tell you the transit service, the third-party providers all include Amtrak in their systems. The question with Amtrak is there may be a limitation within Amtrak that it has to be used on a monthly pass or some kind of ticket provision that they may have. But in general, and specifically, Amtrak is included in that.
Great. Thank you, David.
Sure. So what does it cost employers? And again, I'm building on what I said. Commuter benefit programs can be free or low cost. And we'll go to the bottom, and I'll give you the answer to that, is that regardless of vendor, looking at third-party programs, the fees are usually charged on and you can see in here, on a per person per month basis. And generally those fees do not exceed the FICA savings of the employer. So if the employer is saving 7.65% on every dollar that an employee sets aside, I'm fairly certain that most third-party providers are not charging a fee of 7.65% per employee per month. My general feeling is, if you have a provider who is charging you in excess of your FICA savings, it might be time to find a new provider. It is a competitive market. But going back up, transit agency pass programs like SEPTA Key are free, as is buying passes from Chesco Bus. The same thing, New Jersey Transit, virtually every transit agency in the country, their employer pass program is free. You can, as I've been talking, you can outsource through a community benefit provider or third-party administrator. They're in the position, though, to give you a broad program. And I'm not advocating for one or the other. Obviously, there's a cost and no cost. But the bulk voucher and anonymous prepaid cards usually have a small fee attached to them based on the face value of the voucher or the fare media purchased. Employees who use an online ordering platform receive a catalog of products, and that could be a voucher, it could be a debit card, it could be a direct load. They choose the program that they want, and then delivery is, if it passed, it's delivered to the employee's designated address on a monthly basis, or a monthly electronic load to their smart card. These fees, as I was mentioning, are typically per person per month and are billed directly to the employer. They're not billed back to the employee. The employee does not pay for those fees. So I want to touch a little on commuter benefit ordinances. And again, I'm giving you an overview, and we'll certainly get to questions. I'm going to go to the bottom again. Some of you heard that the city of Philadelphia has a commuter benefit ordinance that took effect on December 31st. So what is an ordinance? And it's a law enacted on a city or regional level. There's about 12 to 13 cities in the country that have them. It's designed to promote adoption of commuter benefits by employers. In San Francisco, for example, there's an ordinance that covers the 9-county Bay Area district. It's very popular. What it does is it takes a very popular benefit and expands it to more employees, especially small employers who typically don't offer a lot of benefits, and in some cases are unlikely to know about the commuter benefit, but also it allows them, even though it's a mandate on them, it allows them to be competitive with other employers. It can increase regional mobility and decrease traffic congestion, particularly because it encourages employees to switch to transit and van pools and other alternatives. There's been some studies out in the Bay Area that have been mandated by that legislation that show some air quality improvement and certainly some congestion improvement. The reduction of greenhouse gases, and it can reduce expenses for employers to pay for parking for their employees. In terms of how the law is applied, these ordinances require very minimal paperwork. They typically require maybe a filing in the Bay Area. Employers have to file that they're participating. In New York City, in New Jersey, which has a statewide program, it's done on an exception basis. A violation is reported to the New York City Department of Consumer Affairs. They call the employer and they say, we hear you're not offering the benefit to your employee. And the immediate fix is, okay, we'll start to offer it. It doesn't require the employer to buy passes or provide passes. What these ordinances do, and Philadelphia is still working on the rules, the ordinances simply say to the employer, you have to offer it, i.e., if your location is served by transit or you have employees who use transit, you just have to say to the employees, we have this benefit available. The onus is on the employee to enroll, not on the employer to force employees to enroll in the benefit. And I think that's key because ordinances have over time had some pushback because they were viewed as a mandate to do something where all employers had to do is say, we have this available to you. If you're interested, come talk to HR. So let's talk about getting started in a commuter benefit program if you don't have one. And it's really done in 7 steps. And I think, Tim, you'll have a further handout on this.
Yes, we can get that out later on, David.
Okay. That I've worked with Tim and to create a much more detailed look at these 7 steps. But first, excuse me, start with strategic analysis. And very simple. Is your location served by transit? If you offer the benefit, would there be more employees who might come to your company to work as an attractive benefit to offer? Then you want to do a participation analysis. How many employees already take transit to get to work? Probably something that not many employees or employers know. And are employees interested to taking transit if they knew there was a program available to them? Who will carry the torch? Very simply, company has to find a champion to get the program through HR and through administration, and to start the process of informing employees about it. If you build it, they will come, maybe. Often what has happened is employers will start a commuter benefits program, they'll announce it, and then nobody signs up. It takes time. People have to change their attitude towards transit in some cases, and change their habits and commuting patterns. Some companies have started programs by saying, we'll subsidize your first month, let's say $50, second month at $25, third month at $10, with the hope that by month 4, the employee says, well, this is pretty easy, and they'll sign up to continue in the program. So you have to work at introducing the program to the employees. And then 3, 2, 1 takeoff is how you launch it. What's available to you? Years ago, it was the company bulletin board in the coffee break room. Well, now there's social media, there's all kinds of internal platforms. The word has to go out to all employees that it's available. Maybe you invite everybody in for a coffee session in a smaller company so they can learn about it. And that goes back to 4, is you have to keep people informed of the program. Your next step is program analysis. Make sure the program has a pulse. Did people sign up? Are they having any problems with it? Assess, essentially it's customer service. Assess how people are participating, and if they like it or don't like it, what changes need to be made. These are very flexible programs, and it's not hard to add options. Sometimes it's just a schedule when you have to order your passes. In some cases, maybe it's adding a van pool program because there's a demand for it. And 7, again, on the same theme, don't keep it a secret. You have to keep letting employees know that the program is there. Get testimonials from people who are already doing the program and are happy with it and understand the benefits. So that's about all I have for the moment. I do have a couple of resources that I want to talk about. Obviously, TMACC is the prime resource, and Tim's the one to be in touch with. The Association for Commuter Transportation Act, which Tim talked about, is the leading TDM, that's Transportation Demand Management Organization in the country, and is a big advocate for commuter transportation and, I would say, commuters' rights. Best Workplaces for Commuters, which is a program run by the Center for Urban Transportation Research at the University of South Florida. You can actually win an award, Best Workplaces for Commuters. But if you go to their site, they have lots of tips on how to do not just commuter benefit programs, van pooling and other mobility programs. And finally, IRS Publication 15B. This is an annual publication put out by the IRS that is a guide for employers of how to do all kinds of fringe benefits, but there's a specific section on the commuter benefit, which will talk about some of the things that I've talked about and make certain references to the tax code. It's very, very valuable. As I said, not much has changed over the years, but it's something that HR people and probably payroll people should have at hand to understand their requirements under the program. That's all I have.
So David, we do have two questions that fall into the for you here. Since the bike benefit is suspended until 2026, and there's some legislation that David and I are kind of following up on, but we're not too hopeful on it because of the current makeup of Congress right now. But there is new legislation being proposed on this. The employer is no longer required to offer reimbursement. Are there any other bike benefits as an employer we need to know about? And this comes from Vanguard, who does have a great cycling community that's attached to them. Are you aware of anything, David?
Well, actually, there's a blessing in disguise in this, because while that $20 reimbursement was suspended, there's nothing to stop an employer from offering its own benefit as $50, $100, and actually writing it off as a business expense.
Okay.
So now, and I know that most employers probably are going to say, well, I only want to limit it to the $20, but excuse me, I'm very sorry. An employer can still offer a bike benefit just as part of their HR package. But the downside to that is has to be reported as taxable income to the employee. Because it would be
so thank you so much, David. So I think in addition to that question is, and what's ironic, it actually just came across my desk this morning before this meeting. And we do have a crew member in Philly who is aware of the ordinance, obviously not aware that it was suspended for the bike piece of it. But I want to have an answer for him if, as an employer, we are not going to do any subsidy for it. Is there any requirement currently that we need to do to offer any type of reimbursement or benefit of any kind for biking, whether it be Malvern or Philly?
No, there's no requirement to offer a bike benefit.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure, and in fact, Daniel, it's under only under an ordinance is there a requirement to offer a benefit. In locations where there is no ordinance, there's no mandate. So there's no federal mandate that employers have to offer a commuter benefit.
Okay, so one of our locations is located in Philly. We have about 100 crew there. So I think that's where, with the Philadelphia ordinance, I just wanted to make sure that that we're obviously in compliance with what we need to be.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Danielle, through HR, you'll have to work through that balance because the city is required now for those benefits because that ordinance is in place. And yes, David.
Danielle, there's no reason why you shouldn't offer it to everybody who's outside the city too.
Thank you.
So another of the questions that came in, one of the ways employers can offer the QTFR is vouchers for a bicycle. Does that mean a voucher for the purchase of a bicycle since the bike share was an ineligible expense? I know that in the current legislation that's being proposed, there is their line item for the purchase of a bicycle.
The IRS has been sort of vague on the rules regarding the bike benefit. Under the bike benefit, which is suspended, a bike purchase was permitted. Bike lockers, anything equipment related to riding a bike. So you could conceivably receive 12 vouchers in the year, so that's $240, and take them into a bike retailer and buy a bike. The bike vouchers were only offered by Eden Red. As far as I know, I don't know that any other companies have gotten involved in it. And those vouchers were only limited. They set that up so the use was limited to bike shops. And they enrolled a number of bike shops in various metropolitan areas. So you couldn't take it to Target and buy a bicycle. It wouldn't be accepted. Target wouldn't know what to do with the voucher. So it was a way of keeping the voucher into the bike community. On the other hand, if it's a $20 reimbursement, it's on the onus of the employee and then to the employer to make sure that it's a legitimate receipt. In that case, yes, they went into Target and there's a receipt that says, I bought a Trek $7,200, that's a lot of bike, 7,200 model bike. So the employer has to do some due diligence on that reimbursement. I mean, that's normal accounting or logical accounting anyway.
So do we have any other questions? I'm gonna take the resources off here. So I'm gonna stop that share and bring everybody back together here. And Joyce, we will be making the slide deck available to everybody. I do some conversion here. So we'll send it out to everybody who registered. Does anybody else have a question that they would like to ask David? The answer is yes.
Okay, and feel free to reach out to me also.
So I do have one closing poll here that I like to share with everybody. This is for us. And then I know also when we close out the program, everybody will be sent a survey. Please take a couple of minutes, fill that out. I tried to make it as simple as possible for everybody. It will help us work through programming for future employer council topics, as well as, what do we need to prioritize to serve our business community here in and around Chester County. As you take this final survey, this final poll here, I do want to point out next Tuesday, February 14th at noon, we are actually hosting a forum with SEPTA to talk about some of the proposed changes to SEPTA service in Chester County. So please sign up for that. It'd be very similar to this, a presentation by SEPTA, and we'll be taking questions. Then on March 24th at 8 a.m., we will be at the Desmond for an in-person meeting. We will be doing a transportation briefing, and the folks that we will be bringing in for that will be the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission to talk about some of the topics that are impacting Chester County. And then on April 10th, we will be out at the Chester County Training Center in partnership with the Western Chester County Chamber. We will be focusing on the Route 30 corridor and some of the changes that will be occurring there, as well as folks from PennDOT will be there to talk about the Cootsville and the Downingtown train stations. And then the Chester County Planning Commission will be there to talk about the Schuylkill River Trail, or the Chester Valley Trail west on that front. Please, if you haven't signed up for our Monday morning memo, you can do that on our website too. And I am 3, 2, 1.
Poll, Tim.
I'm going to end the poll as right. And I can share the results with everybody here. And then so we can say, share a ride, best practices. We will be doing a program on that. I have some folks lined up, establishing a shuttle and last mile connector. That is something that is in our wheelhouse too. And then remote work best practices and trends. Another great topic that we do have some great resources for that. So thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for spending your lunchtime with us. I will be getting out that slide deck to everybody later, probably tomorrow morning. We'll be going out to everybody, and then we will be condensing this down and having a video, so you can also share the video with others that were not able to attend. Again, thank you everyone. Thank you for being with us, and have a great day.
Thanks, Tim.